Hello and welcome to the Kanawha Valley Hustlers. This is Joe Justice. I am here at First Tuesdays with Up Next Charlie West. I'm here with Chuck. Chuck, tell me, buddy, what's your hustle?
Well, my hustle is we build your people so your people can build your business. You know, companies have businesses, but if they don't invest in their people and they don't grow and they don't develop, the business will not grow. So we work with coaching, leadership, communication. Most of the stuff all boils down to communication. You look at any problem that you've had, if you do any kind of research or study on it, it's all going to boil down to communication and that somebody didn't tell somebody what they needed to know.
Well, buddy, you hear that a lot. You seem to hear that a lot in marriages and business and everything else. It all comes down to communication breakdowns, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of stuff we teach in a workshop setting is absolutely applicable with marriage, kids, in your churches, wherever you are with a group of people. Communication just is not what it needs to be. And that's our goal, is to help people be more proactive, ask more questions, communicate more clearly, and understanding folks' style. We do a lot we use a DISC assessment to help people understand their style. And that is such a huge part of it, because some people you got to pull stuff out of them, other people you just got to sit there and listen. And sometimes you just have to know what your role is.
Now, I run into one of the things that I've experienced that I've learned is if you disagree with somebody and you can kind of articulate their point of view, then you can kind of find a solution. Is there any one go-to thing that you teach, one 30,000-foot view, kind of a lesson that you could give people in a short time period to help them out with their communication?
Well, we have a new program actually on emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has been around a long time. I mean, it goes all the way back. Probably Dale Carnegie was the first one to recognize emotional intelligence. He just didn't call it that. Now you have a guy named Dan Goleman who has the book on it. You could even go back to probably 600 BC with the Stoics, and they're the philosophers of Socrates and those guys. They really were into it way before even Covey was, or even Dale Carnegie. I'm sorry. Covey was a good one too, but we can. There is a type of empathy called cognitive empathy. I understand your point of view, and you understand my point of view. That doesn't mean we have to agree. So we can understand without agreeing. And if we can get to that point, I understand where you're coming from, and you understand where I'm coming from. We just aren't coming from the same place, and I think that's a huge piece. But emotional intelligence, I've been researching this program, just rolling it out. Next week is the first time that we'll present it for a client. And it's so much common sense, but common sense isn't common. My wife is in the medical field, and we have lots of clients at our hospitals and whatnot. And we endlessly hear that the doctors have zero emotional intelligence. And they don't. They're just not empathetic to the patient. They're there for a process, or to do a procedure, do a process, and leave. And it's just crazy how prevalent that is.
And I think that's the problem with, it seems like the world today, you got a checklist and everything becomes something to mark off of a list, right?
Yeah, it's too many people are just checking the list, not looking to see what should be on the list, or maybe some of the stuff that should not be on the list. We see lots of folks who just major in minor stuff. And I'm like, well, why do you do that? Well, because it's got to get done. Well, if it's not done, who's going to miss that? Anybody going to miss that it wasn't done? Anybody going to go, hey, that didn't get done? And most of the stuff, they're not. I'm also a close enough guy. I know lots of perfectionists, and they expect perfection, they aim for perfection, and they are constantly disappointed.
Yeah.
And in many cases, what they're looking for, the difference between that perfection in their mind and good enough in my mind, there's no difference. Right. I mean, good enough would have been good enough in 80% or 90% of the situations.
And done is better than perfect, right?
Exactly. You got to get it done. Yeah, done is done.
So I do hear a lot of people, as we kind of wrap up here, a lot of people my age complain about the kids these days. You hear it all the time. You hear they don't work as hard as we did. They're not showing up. Things like that. Are those the kinds of things that you talk to people about, how to handle those situations?
Well, it's setting expectations. I've got a 26-year-old. He works at Toyota. It's a great job, great kid, huge love for God. But if I ask him to help me, if I say, hey, Brendan, can you help me? In his mind, I just took his whole day. He's like, oh, what is it now, Dad? He looks like those mannequins. They make those millennial mannequins in the stores. Shoulders just slump. So now when I talk to him, and I think this is a great tip for parents, is I need you for 15. Can you help me for 15 minutes? Can you help me for a half an hour? Set that expectation up front, because if you just say, can you help me? It's Pandora's box. But kids this day, they've had everything. They haven't had to work for much. I had my first job at 13 and had a summer job or a job the entire time that I've been growing up. And so many of these kids, they just don't know what it's about. They don't want to work, don't know what they want to do. I wish that the schools would spend more time helping these kids. And we do a lot with the DISC assessment. And I wish they would do more with helping these kids. Once you get to high school, they're old enough to know, and really helping them decide what it is they want to do. Because you got tons of kids going to college that don't need to be in college. Yeah. They're not college kids. All they're going to do is rack up a bunch of debt or spend a bunch of their parents' money. Either way, it's debt. My son, once again, he gets through college and he says, Dad, college didn't do me any good. Yeah. I really wish I would have just got into the workforce. I'd be 4 years further ahead of my career. And that's sad. Yep. Sad for him, sadder for me, but really sad for him. But we've got to find a way to get these kids to a point younger in life where they know what they want to do, so we can get them on the path.
At least get them working and get them knowing how to show up on time, how to set expectations, things like that, right?
Give them a couple years of military service right out of high school. I mean, some of these countries that do that, we think that that's weird, but it would teach them to discipline. It would teach them work ethic. It would, and in very many cases, they might put them in a situation that they like, and they would stay there, and they would grow. And I mean, I had a bunch of kids I was in high school with it. I just didn't know what was going to happen to them. And almost all of them went in the military, and now they're retired, and they're traveling the world. I'm just sitting there jealous of them. I'm like, man, well, how come I didn't do that? Exactly. But then I know a bunch of folks who went into the military and did their 20 years, and then came out and started a second career. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There ain't nothing wrong with that. So
awesome. Well, Chuck, I want to thank you so much for being with us here today. And I want to thank you for listening. And this is Joe Justice, the Kanawha Valley Hustler, reminding you to hustle hard, hustle smart, and hustle with a smile.